This isn't just about a house. It's about how I fought to give my daughter her freedom back. I gave my daughter a home to build her dreams, but her husband's family turned it into her prison. The day they moved in, she called me, whispering for help. I should have stopped them sooner. But now, I'll burn everything down to set her free. My name is David Monroe. I run a quiet little bookstore in Forest Park, Portland. After my wife passed away, my world shrank to just one mission. Make sure Clara, our only daughter, never felt abandoned again. She had always dreamed of a house with big windows and a rose garden. I spent years saving, sold half the shop's rare book collection, and finally gave her the keys to a white two-story home nestled in a quiet suburb. It wasn't just a gift, it was a promise. That day her smile lit up the porch like spring sunlight. She hugged me so tight, whispered, "I'll make this a home, Dad." I believed her. But that night, the phone rang. Her voice cracked like glass. "Dad," she whispered, "something's not right." I stopped by Clara's house again on Wednesday, told myself it was just to drop off a few gardening books, but really I needed to see her with my own eyes. Marjorie answered the door again. She wore slippers and a cashmere shawl, as if she owned the place. Her eyes narrowed. "Oh," she said, "you're back." I forced a smile. "Just bringing Clara something." Behind her, the living room was a mess of open boxes and furniture pushed around. A crystal bowl sat on the coffee table, filled with keys, receipts, and someone's earrings. That wasn't Clara's style. She hated clutter. Marjorie didn't invite me in. She stepped outside and shut the door behind her, holding it close like I might peek through. "She's tied up, unpacking." Unpacking? It had been 6 days. "Tell her I dropped this off," I said, handing over the book. She nodded without looking, already turning to go inside. As the door clicked shut, I heard a voice. Clara's, "Mom, I was going to clean that up," and Marjorie's sharp reply, "Clearly not fast enough." I stood there, frozen. That wasn't a conversation, that was a command. The next day, Clara called me while walking to the mailbox. Her voice was low, nervous. "They've changed everything, Dad." Ethan said the layout was awkward. His mom wanted her china cabinet in the dining room. We had to move the table. And my bookshelves. They're in the garage now. "Why?" She said it made the room feel cluttered. I bit down on my tongue. "What about the guest room?" She took it. "She?" "Marjorie. She said it's more convenient if she stays longer." Stays, not visits. I closed my eyes. "And Ethan?" A long pause. "He says it's temporary, that I should be flexible." "And what do you think?" Another silence. I think I don't recognize my own house." Later that evening I drove by again. Through the side window, I saw Clara sweeping the floor. Her motions were stiff, mechanical. Marjorie hovered nearby, arms folded, watching her like a supervisor, not a mother-in-law. "Ethan?" He was sitting in the recliner, scrolling his phone, headphones in, oblivious. No one said thank you. No one offered to help. Just Clara, cleaning, adjusting, shrinking. And suddenly I saw it. Not a home, but a stage. One where Clara had been demoted from star to silent crew member. I drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles whitened. Something had to change. Soon. Clara had always been the kind of daughter who called just to say hi. No reason. No agenda. Just her voice filling up my quiet cottage. But lately, her calls were clipped. Timed. If they lasted more than 2 minutes, I was lucky. "Sorry, Dad. Got to run. Can't talk now, they're calling. Another time, I promise." And every time, her voice sounded a little smaller. I decided to stop by again. This time, without a warning. Marjorie answered the door, her expression tight. "David," she said flatly, like my name tasted sour. "I was in the neighborhood," I lied. "Thought I'd check in." She didn't move aside. "We're in the middle of reorganizing. Not a good time." "I won't stay long," I said, stepping forward just enough to see inside. The house looked different. My bookshelves were gone. The art Clara picked for the hallway was replaced by heavy old oil paintings Marjorie's style. In the kitchen, I saw Clara bent over the table, folding napkins. Ethan sat at the breakfast bar, scrolling through his phone, earbuds in, ignoring everyone. "Clara," I called gently. She looked up, startled. Her eyes widened, but not in joy. In worry. "Dad, I didn't know you were coming. I tried calling." She glanced at Marjorie, then back at me. Sorry, things have been busy. Marjorie's arms were crossed. Ethan didn't even look up. I brought your favorite blueberry muffins, I said, lifting the small box. Still warm. Oh, thank you, Clara said, stepping toward me. But her voice lacked energy. She didn't hug me. Marjorie snatched the box. I'll put these away. Clara hesitated, then gave me a rehearsed smile. Everything's fine, Dad. You sure? She nodded too quickly. Just adjusting. To what? To sharing space. Ethan chuckled. Some people take longer to adapt, he muttered, eyes still on his phone. I looked at him. He didn't look back. That was the moment. That flicker, Clara's eyes darting to the floor, the way she rubbed her arm, the way her voice kept lowering as if she was rehearsing lines she was forced to memorize. Marjorie reappeared. Well, thank you for stopping by. We've got a lot to do. I turned to leave. Clara walked with me to the door. I lowered my voice. Call me tonight? She glanced back. If I can. I nodded and stepped out into the chill air. As the door closed behind me, I realized I hadn't seen my daughter. I'd seen someone trying to become invisible in her own home. That night I couldn't sleep. The clock on the wall ticked louder than usual, and the silence of the cottage felt oppressive. I sat in my armchair, the fire long gone cold, a mug of tea untouched in my hand. I kept replaying the afternoon visit in my mind. Clara's too-fast nod, the way her fingers clutched the hem of her sweater, her strained smile, the way Ethan smirked without looking at me. I pulled out my old leather-bound notebook, the one I hadn't touched since before her wedding. I flipped to a fresh page and wrote the date. Then I wrote one word, unspoken. Beneath it, I jotted everything I could remember from the past few weeks. Day 3. Clara didn't answer my call. Day 6. Voice message quiet, rushed. Day opt. No eye contact. House rearranged. Day 10. Folded napkins like a waitress. No books. No laughter. I began keeping a log, not to stalk her, but to track what I already knew in my gut she was slipping away. I noted the times she called, the tone of her voice, when it was shaky, when she whispered, when she paused too long before answering. I even marked when she didn't call. I needed to see patterns. I needed clarity. Each note became a window into something darker, something Clara wasn't saying but was living. Around midnight, I poured myself a second cup of tea and opened the box I'd kept sealed in my closet. Wedding invitations, thank you cards, photos from her engagement party. There, smiling back at me, was the version of Clara I'd known all my life. Eyes bright, chin lifted, confident. Now? She barely looked like that person anymore. The truth settled in slowly, like fog creeping into the corners of my mind. Clara wasn't just overwhelmed or tired. She was being erased. Quietly, strategically, and I had done nothing but bring her muffins and stand on the porch. I set down the photo and reached for my phone. I didn't call her. Not yet. I opened my contacts and scrolled to a name I hadn't used in years. Diane Kim. Lawyer. Old friend. Trusted. I didn't press call. Not yet. But my thumb hovered, because for the first time since I handed Clara the keys to her dream, I finally admitted the truth to myself. It was no longer her home, and I was done pretending otherwise. David stood outside a modest law office on the corner of Maple and 3rd. The brass plaque on the door read, Diane Kim, attorney at law. He hadn't been here in nearly 15 years. The last time was to sign paperwork after his wife Julia passed. Diane had handled everything quiet, precise, and fiercely loyal. He stepped in. The place still smelled like old paper and eucalyptus oil. David! A voice called from behind a frosted glass panel. He turned. Diane stood in the doorway, her dark hair streaked with silver now, glasses perched low on her nose. She didn't smile right away, just scanned his face, reading the lines there. It's been a long time, she said, walking over and pulling him into a brief hug. You okay? David nodded, then shook his head. Number, I need your help. She ushered him into her office, where they sat across from each other, sunlight filtering through vertical blinds. It's about Clara, David began, voice rough. I gave her a house, paid for it in full, put everything in her name. But now, something's wrong. Diane leaned in, instantly focused. Go on. He told her everything, the rushed phone calls, the nervous visits, the silence when he asked how she was. And then about Ethan. about Marjorie. She's being controlled, David said finally. I don't think she even realizes how deep it's gotten. Diane frowned. Does she have any joint ownership with Ethan? Number, I made sure of that. Her name's the only one on the deed. Have you seen the deed recently? David hesitated. Number, I haven't asked her to show it. Diane opened her desk drawer and pulled out a notepad. We need to get a current certified copy. County Registrar's office can issue it. If there's been any change, we'll see it there. David's hands clenched in his lap. You think someone tampered with it? Diane didn't answer immediately. In cases of coercive control, sometimes the abuser uses legal tools to isolate or dominate their spouse. Power of attorney, title transfers, even forged signatures. David's stomach turned. You think Ethan could have convinced her to sign something? Diane gave a tight nod. It's possible. Or he could have had something slipped in under other paperwork. If Marjorie's involved, even more likely. David leaned back, his heart pounding. I just wanted her to have a place that was hers. A future. You still can, Diane said firmly. But we need facts first. I'll request the title history and look into any changes. You'll need to get Clara talking carefully. If she has documents, get copies. And don't confront Ethan. Not yet. David looked out the window where the afternoon light glinted off parked cars and sidewalks. The world outside moved on, unaware of the quiet war happening inside one house in Portwell. She used to love drawing floor plans when she was little, he said quietly. Called them freedom maps. Diane softened. Then let's help her build one that's real. One no one can take from her. David nodded slowly, resolve hardening in his chest. Where do we start? I'll handle the paperwork. You start listening. Every detail matters now. As he left the office, the late sun warmed his shoulders. The fog in his mind had lifted slightly. There was a path forward, and this time he would follow it step by step until Clara was free. David stood in the cool morning air outside Diane Kim's office, the weight of his phone still lingering in his hand. He had just finished a terse but focused call with her. Come in around 9, she'd said. I have someone you should meet. He's very good. Her tone had been sharp, serious. Not the Diane he used to banter with over coffee when their kids were in school. No, this Diane was a lawyer on a mission, and David could feel the gravity of what was coming. Inside, Diane's office buzzed with quiet efficiency. Shelves lined with legal books and framed degrees flanked her desk. A man in a dark gray blazer stood by the window, flipping through a leather-bound notebook. This is Mark Wilson, Diane said, standing. Private investigator, ex-NYPD. He works fast, and he doesn't miss a thing. Mark looked up, gave David a nod. Heard a bit about your situation. You're not just dealing with a toxic household. There might be real crimes involved. David exhaled. Then I need you to dig. Everything. Especially the mother-in-law, Marjorie. Something about her has never sat right with me. Mark didn't blink. Give me a week. 6 days later, Mark walked into the same office, this time with a sealed envelope and a face like he'd found gold in the mud. She's dirty, he said, dropping the envelope on Diane's desk. David's hands trembled as he pulled out the photos. Marjorie dressed to the nines, stepping into a hotel with a man who clearly wasn't her husband. Another shot, her laughing, arms linked with the same man in a private lounge. But that wasn't the worst of it. Flip through the back, Mark said. There, tucked behind the photos, were printed screenshots of bank transactions. Transfers between Marjorie and a defunct LLC, registered under a false name, one tied to a fraud case in Nevada 4 years prior. The victim? A retired school principal who lost over $180,000 to a fake investment scheme. The perpetrator had vanished. Now, Mark believed, she was living under her maiden name, Marjorie Eldon. David sank into the chair, heart thudding. She's not just overbearing, Diane said softly. She's a professional con artist, Mark added, and she's been using Clara's address for mail forwarding, probably to keep off the radar. David looked at Diane, voice low. Is Clara in legal danger? Not yet, Diane replied. But if Marjorie tries to use Clara's name or property as collateral again, she could be dragged into something criminal. We need to act fast. But Mark wasn't done. There's more, he said, reaching into his pocket and sliding over a folded photo. It was grainier, clearly taken from a distance. Ethan David's son-in-law seated at an outdoor cafe. Across from him, a woman with red hair leaned in close, smiling. Her hand brushed Ethan's. I tailed him for 2 days. This was yesterday. That woman is not a cousin or coworker. They met again that night at a bar in Westport. David felt the breath leave his lungs. Mark's voice hardened. He's not just neglecting Clara, he's cheating on her. The room went still. Diane closed the folder and looked at David. Now you have leverage, not just emotional, legal. We can start a petition to protect Clara's rights to the house, freeze any attempt to alter the deed, and prepare for restraining orders if needed. David stared at the documents, fury and purpose coiling in his chest. Clara's suffering hadn't been paranoia. It was real, calculated, and now he had the tools to fight back. This time, he said quietly, I won't let them bury her. Mark nodded. When you're ready, I can dig deeper, but for now, you've got a hell of a start. David gathered the envelope, standing tall. The weight of it was no longer dread, but power. Finally, he held something sharp enough to cut through their lies, and he was ready to use it. David had barely put the folder down when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Then he did. Dad? Clara's voice cracked, trembling. His breath caught. Clara? I can't do it anymore, she sobbed. I don't know who I am in this house. I don't know how I got here. Where are you? In the laundry room. I said I was doing towels. They won't hear me if I whisper. Pack a bag. I'm coming. You sure? I'm already in the car. The drive blurred past. Headlights. Rain. 1,000 silent promises. Clara stood by the mailbox, hood pulled low, duffel bag clutched tight. Her hands shook. When she saw his car, she ran not with panic but urgency, like a prisoner who'd just found the crack in the wall. They didn't speak much on the way home. Just the hum of the engine and the sound of breathing. Clara kept her face turned toward the window. At the cottage, David turned on the warm kitchen lights. The scent of old wood and lemon cleaner filled the space. Clara stepped in, dropped her bag by the door, and stared at the floor like it didn't feel real. I'll make something quick, David said gently. Eggs, toast, like old times. She nodded. Saturday down. Silent. They ate in near stillness, the occasional clink of fork against plate. No pressure, no questions. Then, softly, Do you remember when Mom used to cut the crusts off for me? David smiled. And you'd only eat them if they were in triangles. Clara gave a short laugh, then stared at her hands. I used to feel safe, she whispered. In this house, in myself. She looked up, her voice breaking. But now, I feel like I'm disappearing. Like I wake up and I forget what I like, what I believe, what I sound like when I laugh. David's throat tightened. He stood, walked over, and placed a hand on her shoulder. You're not gone, he said. You're still here, and I'm going to help you remember. She leaned into him, and for the first time in months, she cried without hiding. He held her gently, but inside something else was rising. Something cold, steady, and sharp. Anger. Not wild, reckless fury, but a controlled, calculating rage. They hadn't just made Clara cry. They had tried to erase her, piece by piece. No more standing still, no more waiting. David thought of the folder, the photos, the proof. Tomorrow he would move, with Diane, with Mark, with every weapon they had. He would hunt Marjorie's lies. He would expose Ethan's betrayal. He would put names on every wound they'd carved into Clara's spirit. And he would make damn sure Clara would never again have to whisper for help in her own home. Diane didn't waste time. The next morning she met David Monroe at her office, Clara still asleep back at the cottage. David slid a folder across her desk containing the house deed, transaction receipts, and copies of the photos Mark had taken. Diane adjusted her glasses and studied each document with surgical precision. See this? She said, pointing to the closing papers. This signature isn't Clara's. The strokes are too rounded. The spacing's wrong. David's chest tightened. They forged her signature? Looks like it. And here, she flipped another page. The title transfer section, someone tampered with the dates. It was supposed to remain solely in Clara's name. But this version adds Ethan as a co-owner. Illegally. David stared at the page, his hands curling into fists. They were trying to steal it from under her. Diane nodded grimly. With this level of manipulation, we can push for criminal fraud. But first, we need to confront them and secure the originals before they do something drastic. David rose slowly, the weight of the moment pressing into his spine. Then we don't wait. Back at the cottage, David laid out everything on the kitchen table. The original deed with Clara's notarized signature. The altered version with forged entries. Photos of Ethan with the mystery woman. Images of Marjorie entering hotels with her so-called client. Bank records showing unexplained cash transfers. He added sticky notes with timestamps and arrows, building a narrative so clear it couldn't be ignored. Then he carefully packed it all into a binder and slid it into his briefcase. He looked out the window. The late morning sun bled through the trees, quiet and deceptive. But inside him, there was no quiet. This time he wouldn't knock and wait. This time he wouldn't bring muffins or ask, "How's everyone doing?" This time, he was walking through that door with truth and fire. Clara stepped into the kitchen, hair still damp from her shower, wearing an old hoodie from college. "You're leaving?" she asked softly. David looked at her, really looked, and saw the fear flicker behind her eyes. "I'm going to get your house back," he said, "and I'm not asking any more." She stepped forward, her hand resting on his arm. "Be careful," she whispered. David nodded once. Then he turned, briefcase in hand, and walked out. The drive back to the Portwell house felt different now. He wasn't coming as a father begging for access. He was coming as a man armed with facts, with names, with time-stamped betrayal. They'd tried to hide everything in polite smiles and hushed tones. But they forgot something. David Monroe was quiet but not blind. And this time, the silence was over. The house looked smaller than David Monroe remembered. Maybe it was the weight of what he carried, or maybe the rot behind the walls was finally starting to show. He stood at the front door, briefcase in hand, jaw tight, 3 sharp knocks. The door creaked open. Marjorie appeared, wrapped in her usual silk robe, makeup too perfect for noon. Her smile curled with rehearsed warmth. "Well, this is a surprise," she purred. "Come to bring more muffins?" David didn't smile. "No," he said evenly. "I brought the truth." He stepped inside without asking. Marjorie blinked, caught off guard by the lack of deference. "Excuse me." "I won't be long," he said, placing the briefcase on the dining table. The same table Clara had scrubbed spotless. The same one where silence had ruled. Ethan appeared from the hallway, holding his phone. "What the hell is this?" David opened the case and spread out the documents. "Forgery," he said, tapping the altered deed. "Bank fraud." He laid down the account screenshots. Infidelity. He placed photos of Ethan and the red-haired woman, and then Marjorie and her mystery man. The air shifted. "I don't know what game you think you're playing," Ethan snapped. "No game," David replied calmly. "This is real, certified, copied, witnessed, and already with my attorney." Marjorie's smile cracked. "You're overstepping." "You broke the law," David said, voice rising slightly for the first time. "And you tried to break my daughter." From behind him, the door opened again. Clara stepped in, hair tied back, face clean, her posture straight, not trembling, not hiding. Ethan scoffed. "Oh, look who found her voice." Clara didn't look at him. She walked past David and stood in the center of the living room. Her voice rang clear, echoing off the walls that had heard too many whispered apologies. "This is my house," she said. "You've treated me like I was furniture, like I was a guest in my own life." Ethan laughed bitterly. "You wouldn't have this house without me." Clara turned, eyes burning. "I wouldn't have lost myself without you." She stepped closer, voice shaking but unwavering. "You cheated on me, Ethan. Don't you dare stand there like you're the victim. I saw the pictures, the late nights, the fake names. You betrayed me." Ethan opened his mouth, but nothing came. "You broke every vow we made, and still you tried to take everything from me. But it ends now. You're not just a liar, Ethan. You're not just weak. You're undeserving." Marjorie started. "Clara, sweetie, don't let him fill your head with—" "Stop," Clara cut in, firm. "Don't call me sweetie. Don't talk to me like I'm 6. You lied. You cheated. You used my name for your schemes." Marjorie's mouth opened, but no words came. David stood beside his daughter, silent but solid, her shield, her proof. Ethan looked at the papers again, his confidence thinning. "You think you can scare us with this? We're family." "No," Clara said. "You're not." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was power shifting. For the first time, Ethan looked unsure. Marjorie's hands twitched at her sides. David gathered the papers slowly, deliberately. "You have 24 hours to vacate," he said. "After that, the sheriff comes with us." He turned to Clara. "You ready?" She nodded. More than ever. Marjorie's face contorted as the words sank in. "You have no right to threaten us like this," she spat, stepping forward. "You think you can just walk in here with your little folders and throw us out?" David Monroe stood firm, not flinching. "You can try to argue," he said coldly, "but the documents are real and legally binding." "I will sue you," Marjorie hissed, voice rising. "I will sue Clara for slander, for fraud, for theft." The front door opened again with a sharp creak. Diane Kim stepped in, heels clicking on the hardwood floor. Behind her was Mark Wilson, calm as ever, holding a leather briefcase that matched the storm in his eyes. "You might want to reconsider that threat," Diane said calmly, removing her sunglasses, "because we've already filed a notice with the county clerk. Fraudulent property documents, unauthorized financial transfers, and forged signatures." She handed over a packet thick with stamped and notarized pages. "You sue, we countersue," Diane added. "And I assure you our case is stronger." Marjorie's hands shook slightly as she took the papers, flipping through with quick, jerky movements. "This is a setup," she snapped. "You're all just trying to ruin my family." "No," Clara said clearly from across the room. "You ruined it all by yourself." Ethan, who had been standing quietly by the stairwell, stepped forward, looking between Diane, Mark, and the papers on the table. His eyes darted to the photos of his late-night rendezvous, to the forged signatures, to his mother. "Mom," he said, voice uncertain, "did you really?" "Don't start with me," Marjorie snapped, defensive. But Ethan didn't move. He swallowed hard. "I didn't sign any title transfer forms. I thought it was all—" "You were in on it," Diane cut in sharply. "Whether you understood the details or not, your name's all over the paperwork. Your financial records match the timing of the cash transfers. You are legally exposed, Mr. Walker." Ethan looked pale. Outside the large living room window, movement stirred. Mrs. Henson from next door was out on her porch, squinting toward the house. A man from across the street paused his dog walk, turning to glance at the raised voices. 2 more neighbors were gathering at the edge of their driveways, trying not to look too obvious. David noticed the shift. The performance wasn't private anymore. Clara took a step forward, standing straighter. "This house was meant to be a home," she said, loud enough for everyone in the room, and maybe beyond the windows to hear. "You made it into a prison, but not anymore." "You don't have the right," Marjorie began again. "I do," Clara interrupted. "I own this home, legally, fully. The forged version you tried to use has been revoked, and you are trespassing." Mark stepped forward now. "You've been given written notice. This is no longer a negotiation." Ethan's face twisted in frustration, but he said nothing. Marjorie's rage was barely contained. She opened her mouth once more, then looked out the window and paused. 3 neighbors were now openly staring. One lifted a phone. Marjorie saw it. So did Ethan. The silence tightened. "You're embarrassing yourself," Marjorie muttered, venom low in her voice. "No," Clara said, her voice unwavering. "You embarrassed yourselves." Marjorie reached for her purse. "We'll go," she snapped. "But this isn't over." "It is," David replied calmly. "Unless you want the sheriff here tomorrow morning," Diane added. "Everything's on file. I suggest you walk out while you still can." Marjorie stormed down the hallway. Ethan followed, but not before glancing back at Clara, at the mess, at the weight of what he'd lost. They left in silence, no bags packed, just shame and shattered control. Clara exhaled, her hands trembling only slightly. She looked to Diane, to Mark, to her father. And for the first time in months, she felt something steady in her chest. She had won. The house was quiet again. No slammed doors, no raised voices, no footsteps echoing down the hall with anger behind them. Just stillness. Clara stood at the threshold of the living room, arms crossed, her breath slow. David Monroe watched her from a few feet away, giving her space. He could see her taking it all in not just the silence, but the shift in power. "This doesn't feel like my house," she whispered. "It will," David said gently. "We just need to clear out what doesn't belong." They started in the kitchen. The calendar on the fridge filled with Marjorie's cursive handwriting was the first to go. Clara ripped it down, folded it in half, then in half again. She dropped it into the trash can without flinching. Then came the spice rack, full of things she never bought, never used. David took down the picture frame above the fireplace. a photo of Ethan and Clara, taken on the day they moved in. He hesitated, then placed it face down on the counter. Room by room, they worked. Quietly, methodically. The guest bedroom was next Marjorie's former domain. Clara opened the closet. Lavender perfume still lingered in the air. Folded sweaters, lipstick-stained coffee mugs. An envelope filled with clipped coupons and old appointment cards. She boxed everything up and sealed it with thick tape. They moved to the master bedroom. Clara's steps slowed. The bed looked untouched, but she knew better. She pulled the sheets, removed the pillowcases, flipped the mattress like shedding skin. When she reached the nightstand, she paused. Inside was a necklace she hadn't worn in months. A silver charm with her initials, once a gift from her mother. She held it in her palm for a long time. David, still in the hallway, didn't interrupt. When she emerged, her eyes were glassy, but her voice was steady. "I forgot this even existed." "You didn't," David said. "They just made you forget." Outside, the sun was dipping low, casting long shadows across the wooden floors. They carried the trash bags to the curb. Clara dusted her hands off. Her hoodie sleeves were rolled up, hair in a messy knot. She looked exhausted but alive. Later that evening, David sat on the porch swing, a glass of water in hand. The cicadas had begun their chorus. Clara's laughter, faint and distant, came from inside the house. He smiled. Then the laughter stopped. A few minutes passed before Clara appeared in the doorway. Her eyes were red, but she wasn't broken. She wasn't collapsed. She had been crying, but the kind that empties, not wounds. "I didn't cry when I left," she said. "I didn't cry when I called you. I didn't even cry when I stood up to them." David waited. "But I walked into that bedroom, and for the first time it didn't scare me. It felt mine. And I just—" She stopped, voice cracking. "I cried because I could finally breathe." David set down his glass and stood. He didn't say anything, just opened his arms. She walked into them and let the silence hold her. Betrayal stories like Clara's remind us that even in our darkest moments, faith and resilience can lead us back to light. Throughout every betrayal story, the presence of God offers strength and guidance, showing us that no matter how deep the pain, healing is possible. God's love remains constant in all betrayal stories, giving courage to those who feel broken and hope to those who feel lost. It is through trust in God that David and Clara found freedom and peace once again. Remember, God never abandons those who call upon Him. Betrayal stories teach us that with faith and perseverance, love and justice will prevail over deceit and sorrow. If this story moved you, please like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to our channel for more true betrayal stories that inspire and uplift. Thank you for watching, and may God bless you and your family with peace and grace.